Hi guys, welcome back. We are on episode number 4 of our Well Balanced series. Today I'm talking with Juliet, and she'll hop in here in just a minute. And she's a functional nutrition practitioner, and she works a lot with women in particular to balance their hormones, to restore digestion, and that kind of thing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and then just, of course, wellness tips in general, how the everyday individual can, become healthier and where to kind of start, and then diet myths and things that we can debunk and things like that. So as soon as she gets on, we will start the conversation and get it going. But if you guys want to reach out to her different videos, you can always go to our IGTV. They're all stored there with various practitioners and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get her in here. And there we go. Hi, Juliet. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
Sorry, I'm just getting this set up.
You end up becoming so small when you share with someone. You're like, I was in the screen, now I'm not. There we go. That's better. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Are you still in Park City?
No. I got home Sunday, which, by the way, never fly home on a Sunday night. I haven't done that in a while, and it was nuts.
Yeah.
Absolutely nuts.
Everyone's traveling again?
Yes. And it was just like, we don't check bags that often either, but we were checking the bags just because we were there for a while, and the weather was so random. I was like, I'm just going to bring a bunch of stuff.
You need coats.
Yeah. And then it just ended up being a mess. So yeah, that was what it was. Don't do that. I recommend Sunday morning or a weekday.
Yeah.
Or just never leave your house. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Well, thanks for chatting with me. I'm excited to chat with you and hear more about your story. I was just kind of briefing everybody on who you are, a little bit from your bio on Instagram and things like that, since we've never met in person or ever. But you did convince me to do the program, so I'm very thankful for that. Yes. And I'm excited for that. We're in week 4 or something like that right now. So nice. Slowly working our way in.
Okay, good.
So I want to hear, first and foremost, kind of your story, kind of what got you into, what you're doing right now, whether you were in nutrition your whole life or kind of pivoted. And yeah, just a little bit about you in general. So we'll start there.
Yeah. So my family, my mom in particular, has always been kind of a little bit alternative. We saw a homeopath growing up. And she was also a chiropractor. So we were already kind of plugged into that. But it was really 6 years ago, right after I finished college, my health kind of took a little bit of a nosedive. And everything was fine, right?
Right.
Did my due diligence, went to the doctor, got blood work, kind of did all the stuff, and labs look normal, everything looks fine. Which now I know is actually very common. A lot of people hear that, right? A lot of my clients, they said everything looks normal. And I was like, well, things aren't normal. I do not feel good. I'm not sleeping. I have hives all over my body. My digestion's a mess, right? I was just this is weird, right? For an otherwise perfectly healthy 22-year-old. And so I just kind of was sent on my way with some prescriptions and okay, well, I guess come back if it gets worse. And so my mom was like, this isn't right. Let's try something else. Cause I had kind of always had stuff going on, particularly digestive stuff. It just was my mom was like, there's a common thread here. She was wise to that already. So we embarked on a, kind of healing diet. This was my introduction to real food nutrition, and we did a GAPS protocol. So if you are familiar with GAPS at all, but it was a very intensive kind of at home DIY gut healing protocol. And
do you mind explaining what that is for people that are listening?
Yeah, so the GAPS is an acronym. It stands for Gut and Psychology, or Gut and Physiology syndrome. And it is basically an approach to healing mental and physical health through healing your gut and through nutrition and nourishing foods, and really healing that gut lining, one, and two, restoring the microbiome. So those are kind of like two of the big things that it is working on. And I felt remarkably better. It felt like really day and night for me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And as I was doing this, right, it's very isolating to do something like that. You like can't go out to eat. I wasn't going out to eat. I wasn't, like doing a lot of other normal things, which also, wasn't great for another, kind of number of reasons.
Right.
So, kind of finding my way to a nice middle ground. But I found this like whole community kind of online of like professionals, other people doing real food nutrition and like really experiencing so many benefits from that, kind of like, real food nutrition under the functional medicine umbrella. And so that was kind of like, it was very eye-opening for me. And then, even at that moment, a lot of people that I was following had they were like NTPs. And so I was like, what is this? Like, I'm really curious about that. Like, I am so jealous of everything that they know. And I am like so curious. So at that moment, even when I was kind of like in my very first GAPS protocol, I was like, that is something that I want to do. I'm curious about that. But there was never a right time, right? I was like, no, not now. So right. Delayed. Fast forward years later. I then finally 3 or 4 years later was like, okay, fine. Like, there's never going to be a right time. I finally kind of wised up. Like, there's never going to be a right time. I should just do it. And so then that is when I went to school kind of more formally and did the NTP program, which was incredible. And I was kind of like, yeah, like this is what I want to do professionally. And so then, over a year ago, maybe almost like a year and a half ago, I quit my job, my corporate job. And I was like, I'm going to give this a try. We're going to see what happens. And, so then I started practicing as an NTP full time. And since then I've done some kind of continuing coursework in more advanced, like functional testing and stuff, to kind of add to my toolkit as well. But that is kind of me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. No, I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool that you're able to do this full time. And I love your digestive therapy thing that you got going on. And I think it's a topic that we don't dive very deep into. And I think it's so complex as well. And we normalize a lot of those symptoms. So I think it's really awesome that you were very niched, which is, sometimes rare in those cases. So
yeah. It's hard to do. You want to help everyone.
I know. It's fair. I have so many interests. I was having that moment yesterday. I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I was like, I just started school and I was like, I'm obviously interested in this. But then I love doing DIY home projects and other random things. And I'm like, these have nothing to do with each other.
You're like, should I be a home flipper? I don't know.
Just quit this. Daniel's like, you can't quit. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I can't. So let's talk about general myths or things that people typically come to you with that are maybe your biggest concerns or biggest things that people, that you're kind of already starting the process out addressing, whether that's, fixing the gut or telling them to just slow down while they're eating, that kind of thing. What are your biggest digestive myths, I guess?
Yeah. So not even a digestive myth, but just kind of a myth in general, especially I think because I mostly work with women. But stop fighting your body, I think is the first thing. And that can apply to anything, right? That can absolutely apply to digestion. But really where I see it come up for women is with just eating enough or exercising too much or, kind of trying to manipulate your body into some shape or size that it doesn't want to be. Doesn't feel healthy. It's not vibrant at that size. And then we can look into all of the symptoms that might stem from trying to hold your body to a size that it might not want to be. And a lot of that can be digestive symptoms. So that can be things like constipation or fatigue, diarrhea, bloating, right? There are certainly lots of symptoms that come from just not eating enough. So that is kind of like the first thing that I'm looking through in like a food and mood journal, like, is this enough food for your active lifestyle, for your, 20, 30, 40 something body? That really is going to need so much more nourishment and so much more nourishment, I think, than we really give our bodies credit for. I think so often women especially are like, oh, well, like I can't, eat as much as my partner, or, whatever, right? It's like everything just needs to be like smaller and less because we are, smaller and we're daintier.
Way more than Jan.
Right?
So much more food. Yeah, it's a good thing though.
Yeah, exactly. And so just kind of like honoring that. And so that is like the first thing that I kind of like, let's really get that figured out, because I think so many people, like, once they start eating more, it's like light bulbs start coming on and things kind of start coming back online. Hormones, digestion, energy, sleep, right? Like all of these things are like, your body's like, we're back.
So can you explain like the big, because I'm sure initially when people think eat more, they think gain weight, right? Like naturally. So it's like, how do you combat that connection? People come to you with that, explaining how the body works in that case. Dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah. I guess my first response would be weight gain is okay. It's not necessarily something we need to combat. If our bodies aren't the size that they want to be, then they will do whatever it takes to get to the size that they want to be, whether that is sugar cravings, whether that's increasing cortisol, which is a hormone that can help you put on weight, help you seek out food, help you stay awake longer to seek out food, right? So it can really hurt our sleep. So whether that is, sugar, whether that's cortisol, whether that's just slowing down your metabolism. So it's slowing down your metabolic rate, right? When you're not getting enough food, your metabolism, your thyroid, everything kind of starts to like slow down because we're not sure where food, like how accessible is food. So things kind of start to slow down when we're in that kind of like low grade deprivation for a long time. So that would be my first response, is like, that's okay. Your body is going to be the size that it needs to be. And again, right, like we need to stop fighting our bodies. And then my next, I guess kind of combating the myth that like weight gain is bad. I think there's a lot of like there's tons of weight stigma in our world. And we are very fat phobic as a society. So that's okay, right? Like weight gain is okay. That might mean healing for your body, and that's okay. But it is also not inevitable, right? When we stop fighting our bodies, things might normalize, things might regulate, and your weight might change in other directions, right? Like it's hard to say what will happen when we start really nourishing and kind of honoring our bodies.
Yes, love that. And I think it's awesome because people, especially women, they focus on the scale, and even in the fitness realm, that's where I get a lot of, clients with that mentality going in. But it's like the body composition truly is what can also change as well. And that is more like if you're getting those frequent, body composition scans to tell you where your visceral fat is and where your lean muscle mass is versus your skeletal mass, all this other stuff. It's like, it's going to tell you so much more of a picture, and you're going to feel and see the difference when you're standing naked in front of a mirror than you will standing on a scale. But sometimes, of course, we're doing that strength training, you're going to gain muscle, but that's going to help your metabolism and it's going to help your health overall. So I think it's just like looking at the big picture is so important. And also in those non-scale wins, right, that you hear about, like having more energy and actually going to the bathroom every day and like getting your period every month and doing these things that are really important that we tend to not see as a win. But I think it's so cool when women are helping women see that value versus just what the scale says, which scales are inaccurate every day. Like, how do you even rely on that? I don't know.
Right.
It's
Throw it out.
electronic, but no, I love that mentality. So, and then let's talk about the gut a little bit. I think the gut's a very complex conversation that most people, they just like, what is the gut? You know, how does it work? What would, like, if you were to say, you know, a few tips to help manage that, manage the gut a little bit, what would you say in that case, to offer some insight?
Yeah, that is a good question. So it kind of cut out for a second. So let me make
Oh,
sure.
sorry. Did you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. So just kind of like tips for gut health. Is that what you were?
Yeah, just like kind of, I think a lot of people are like, what is the gut? You know, and it's like 70% of your immune system's in your gut, but it's like, people are like, what is it? What is that? And then what exactly, you know, does that entail? And also, how can I best support that, you know, without doing a whole deep dive of blood work and things like that?
Yeah. So your gut is your digestive tract from your mouth to your butt, and
To be clear.
normalize poop talk.
No, it's not true.
And it is, so it's all of your human tissues plus, you know, hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of bacterial cells as well. And so that is really kind of like, I think of gut health in like three key pillars. One of them being your own digestive function. Like, are you chewing? Are you breaking things down with enough stomach acid? Are you producing enough enzymes? Are you producing enough bile and, you know, digesting fats and things like that? So that's kind of like digestive function. The next one is your body's ability to actually absorb or keep out toxins, undigested food, bacteria, whatever. So that is what I consider kind of like gut barrier health or gut lining. And then the third piece, kind of like the third pillar of gut health, is really the microbiome. And so that is all of the cells that are not our own, because we have more bacteria cells in and on our body than we actually do human cells, which the first time I heard that, I was like, how is that possible? We can't see them or feel them. But it's because they are so much smaller than our cells. So the bacteria cells are really, really tiny, smaller than our human cells, but they make up a huge component of our immune health, of our hormonal health, of detoxification, producing nutrients, producing neurotransmitters, right? Like our mental health. So that's kind of like the third facet of gut health. So when I am working with someone, or when I'm talking about, you know, how can you improve your gut health, and even with just like at home kind of DIY stuff, it's usually in relation to those three pieces. So the first piece, right, digestive function, like what can we do to improve digestive function? The first one is stop stressing while you're eating, right? Like honoring mealtime. I know this is hammered home so well at the NTA, but it is not a concept that other people have really, you know, heard about, or, you know, kind of even experimented with themselves, but like actually slowing down at mealtime, taking some deep breaths, saying a gratitude. If you pray, then a prayer, or, you know, whatever kind of works for you. Chewing your food is huge, right? We do not have teeth anywhere else along our digestive tract. So that needs to happen in your mouth, and we typically chew like 3 times and swallow it down. But we really, really need to chew our food. Yeah, totally. I'm like, that was good. Next. But I tend to be like a very slow eater, except when I'm like with my family, or I'm like, maybe there's not enough food that I'm, you know, trying to like get as much as I can. So, you know, like not eating while you're distracted, right? Like slow down, take some deep breaths, chew your food, think about your food, right? Like enjoy, think about your food. So those are kind of like the biggest things you can do for digestive function in terms of like a DIY at home kind of thing. You can certainly experiment with apple cider vinegar, or eating bitter foods, which help support bile flow. So there are some other things you can kind of bring in or do or experiment with, depending on your appetite for those types of things. The next biggest piece, right? So if we're kind of moving down, so like digestive function, and then we're talking about the gut barrier. So what can you do to support gut barrier health? The first thing would be to remove the stressors. So are you eating certain things that are particularly inflammatory for you, that you react to, that don't make you feel good, whether that's gas and bloating, or whether that's brain fog or joint pain or fatigue? So kind of drawing those connections and figuring out like what doesn't work for me, what might be contributing to that inflammatory burden in my body. And then what can we add? So can we add in more important amino acids, which we need for tissue healing? So things like glycine, collagen, gelatin, which come from bone broth, is one of the biggest things that I recommend for an at-home solution.
Love bone broth.
Yeah. Which is great for a lot of people. And then some other herbals, right? Slippery elm, marshmallow, cat's claw. Those are some other things you can maybe add in regularly for kind of supporting and healing that mucosal layer of your stomach, of your small intestine. Those are wonderful for healing your gut barrier. And then the third piece is the microbiome. So how can we support this really robust, really resilient microbiome? And there are a lot of things that can go into this, but again, it's kind of two things, right? What can you remove to remove stressors? And what can you add to make sure you're really like fostering this very diverse, very robust kind of community and ecosystem of beneficial bacteria, beneficial yeast, all sorts of things. So again, removing, are there certain things that are giving you symptoms, gas, bloating, things that you are not doing well with right now? And that is okay. I think very often it is, even in the functional space, it's just kind of hammering like more vegetables, more vegetables, more vegetables. And there's actually a lot of people who don't really do that well with plant foods, vegetables, beans, legumes, whatever it is. That's okay. Short term, we might want to pull those out to kind of like calm down the shitstorm that's going on, pun intended. So, you know, like what can we remove? And then really what can we add, right? Because when we have this imbalanced gut microbiome, it is so often that the opportunistic or maybe pathogenic bacteria have crept up and kind of taken over because we don't have enough of the good guys, right? We are kind of like insufficient in the probiotics or the beneficial bacteria. So adding in more things like raw fermented vegetables or dairy, if you do well with dairy, things like that. So food-based probiotics or a high quality supplement probiotic can be really helpful to kind of start to shift that needle more towards a beneficial or, you know, kind of happy and well-balanced microbiome.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that you broke that up into 3 chunks, because I think it's very, when you think gut health, probiotics are like the first thing that I think comes to mind for people, which they're important. But again, it's like, also, if you are eating a very well-balanced diet and have all those things, you may not even need to take a probiotic. So it's like, it's very personalized. And I think it's so much more complex than people realize. For me, I've always struggled with acne, and that's always been my like inflammation, I guess. And I went to do a food sensitivity earlier this year and couldn't have avocado at all. And I eat avocado like 3 times a day. And so I gave that up, and it cleared my skin you know, and then kind of went downhill after that for some reason, but picking things back up again. But it was more like that inflammation, but then also I could just feel a difference in my gut lining because we were also doing like glutamine and other things to help restore that as well from the sensitivity. And
Yeah,
I think it's like there's just so many things that are going into it, but that personalized route is really important. So I think that's really
absolutely.
cool. Do you
Yeah.
have any probiotic brands that you stand by in terms of quality? You know, if anyone's just kind of start to kind of dive into that.
Yeah. Yes, quality absolutely matters, like with anything, with any supplement, with any food, right? And if you can't feel it, if you don't feel any different taking your probiotic, it's maybe not the right one for you. Um, so you do want to be able to like feel a difference, feel a benefit, whether it is in digestion, whether it's in your skin, right? Like again, however your body is presenting, that's what we want to
Mm-hmm.
be looking at. So ones that I recommend are generally either food-based options or kind of spore forming or soil-based, which are more of like the like colonizing bacteria, which can be known as like keystone species. So the keystone species basically means that they are setting up a more hospitable environment for everyone else. And I think a lot of probiotics are kind of like mega dosing with one or two strains, which
Mm-hmm.
can create imbalances in and of itself. And so what we really want is that super diverse microbiome. So if we are only able to encapsulate and dose with a few different strains, right? We can't possibly, put 700 strains in a capsule. So what we do want to put in the capsule is something that is going to like foster good diversity and really support the health of hundreds of other strains as well. So one that I have found that has done that and is pretty well researched as well. One brand is Megaspore. So that is typically kind of where I start with clients. And if that is working well, we'll kind of stick with that for a while and then kind of begin to rotate through some others. But that is kind of typically where I start.
Yeah, I love that. And so the rotation is something that you definitely encourage in terms of, because again, you want to have different varieties, just like you would food. You want to get this different bacteria and not keep the same thing every single, for a year's period.
Right.
So would you
right.
say how like every 3 months, every 4 months, or what would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we would typically stick with Megaspore for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months. And then from there, just like by bottle. So typically that's like a month. If there's like 30 or 60 capsules in a bottle, and then kind of like rotating through from there.
Nice. Okay, good. Love that.
Yeah.
Well, that was a really insightful conversation. I don't want to take any more of your time,
Yeah.
but I
Thank you so much.
definitely want to hear just a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you, what you offer, where they can find you, website, social media. I'll, of course, tag you in the caption. But yeah, share that and then I'll let you go.
Cool. So I am working with clients one-on-one. I do have a group program that'll be open next year, early next year. So the best way to find me is at Nutrition Riot on Instagram or on my website, same name. And yeah, I am working one-on-one with clients. I do have a few one-on-one openings right now. So if that's something you're thinking about, you're thinking about struggling with digestion, inflammation, hormones, then that is kind of where I am set up to help people right now.
Do you offer any like individual testing, or is it like kind of what's your process look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do testing. If someone is keen on testing, then we'll typically start with a gut panel, a GI map. That is the test that I use. But I also do hormone testing. That'll kind of typically be down the road, right? We always want to start with the gut and kind of healing and working through that. And so I'll typically start with gut testing, and blood work as well. So I interpret blood panels kind of from more of a functional perspective. So if you've been told that your lab work is normal, I encourage you to find someone who can interpret it from a functional perspective, because I am sure that things will come up and we'll find ways to optimize that might have been missed from a conventional perspective.
Yes, I totally agree. Live to be optimal, not normal.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
Well, again, it was great talking with you. I will tag you in the caption for anyone that's interested. But I look forward to connecting more. And
Thanks, Kelly.
any way we can support each other, I look forward to it.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, Juliet. Have a good day. Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.